Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, my name is Sean, and I'm a grateful alcoholic. Sometimes. After all that brass band and everything, I wish I had something important to say. Well, how's this? I haven't had a drink or a drug or any self-administered mind-altering chemical that affects me from the neck up since April 24th, 1974, and I'm really grateful for that. It's great to be in Southern California. I mean, it's just wonderful. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm a Canadian. I'm a foreigner. I don't know how you describe. Canadians are kind of like unarmed Americans with health care. That's what we are. My home group is the Wednesday night participation group in Vancouver, British Columbia, and anytime you're there, please come by. It's a great meeting. But it sure is wonderful to be here in Southern California. It's just wonderful. I mean, I got sober in Southern California. I got sober in Hollywood, California, and spent the first 15 years of my sobriety there, and then moved to Canada. I was born in Canada, so it was like coming home. And to be asked here is just really wonderful. We were asked to be here last year, but I couldn't make it, and I'll tell you a little about that later. If you're new here, if you're kind of kicking around, you know, and if this is more to you than just free aftercare from a treatment center, if you're as flat out and desperate as I was when he got here. The steps were real interesting. Now, I don't want to shove these things down your throat. You don't have to take the steps. We don't tell you have to do. You're not forced to do that. We suggest you do. When we read Chapter 5, we talk about these are the steps we took. You don't have to take them, but we took them. And they are suggested, and I've come to find out that suggestions in Alcoholics Anonymous are along this line. This plane is on fire and about to crash. We suggest that you jump out. And then we suggest that you count to 10, and then we suggest you pull the ripcord. Of course, it's up to you. I started taking the steps the first night that I was sober because I was terrified, and I didn't think there was anything else to do. And I started doing it, and the first one was easy for me because I started getting drunk when I was 14 years old. I started taking drugs when I was 17 years old. When I was 18 years old, I declared myself an alcoholic, and I didn't know that I had done it. But I said the phrase that only an alcoholic says, and if you're kind of here on a visiting pass and not sure that you belong here, if you've ever said it, you belong here. If you've ever heard anybody say it, you're listening to an alcoholic, and the phrase is, I can control my drinking. Non-alcoholics never say that. Social drinkers never say that, you know. If social drinkers do something stupid whilst drinking, they stop drinking. Have you ever noticed? Isn't that weird? But I was 18 years old, I'd been getting drunk for 4 years, and I'd been taking drugs for a year, and I was in trouble with the chemicals. So I started the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. We just heard it. To control and enjoy my drinking. Did you ever get it at the same time in the same room? And I never did. I never got control and enjoy, man. When I was controlling my drinking, I was miserable. You know, somebody says drink 2 drinks a night, my first reaction is, how big are the glasses? Yeah. And the only way I've ever enjoyed my drinking is wildly out of control. I got to tell you something. The reason I'm standing here is I love drinking. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I love getting bombed, blasted, ripped, damaged, wrecked, all those wonderful phrases for it. I just love being out there at 3 o'clock in the morning, stark naked, howling at the moon. I just loved it. I love those stupid drinks in coconut shells with umbrellas and bits of fruit. I love those intense intellectual conversations we got into in those bars, you know, when we reappointed the Supreme Court. I love those meaningful relationships that sometimes lasted all night. I love the way it felt going down, and I didn't mind the way it felt coming up. Because every time I drank, from the first time I did it at 14 years old until the last time I did it the night before Alcoholics Anonymous, I had the moment. Now, I hear people talk at Alcoholics Anonymous that drinking quit working for them, and if that had ever happened to me, I'd have quit drinking. I mean, I'm not stupid. It happened every time I drank. Every time I drank, there was that moment. I don't know whether it was 3 scotches and 2 joints, or whether it was 6 Seconal and a couple of vodka, or maybe it was some Desputal and some brandy, or turpin hydrate and bay rum. Sometimes, you know. But there was a moment every time, and suddenly I was everything I needed to be. I was fabulous, you know? Tough, but sensitive. Sexy, but charming. An intellectual with some humility. Fast with my fist and great on the dance floor. I was dazzling, man. It happened every time. You know, at first it was out there, and then it kind of got stuck to my forehead somehow. You know that moment? Then slowly it slid down into the back of my throat, that moment, you know? And then as this thing went on, it got right to the center of my gut. And it sat there and waited for me to wake it up. And I paid a higher and higher price every time to wake it up. But by God, every time I drank, I woke it up. And there I was, just out there. Just the best. And then it would start to get a little dim, you know? So I'd have another drink just to kind of prop it up, you know, just to kind of keep it going. And, you know, and then it would be an hour and a half later and I'd be coming to and there'd be 15 people standing around the circle going, and I knew I'd done it again, you know? I just always kind of overshot it. I don't know about you. Oh, man. And I don't know when it turned to the point where I stopped bragging about my drinking and was lying about it. You know, I don't know when that happened. I don't know when the time came when it had become the central issue, you know, where that moment, that seeking that moment had been the thing. You know, I don't know when it happened when I seemed to be always recovering from a drunk or planning a drunk, you know, or doing something. Not a drunk. I never wanted to get drunk. I just wanted that moment, you know. And then there were the drugs. I mean, I'm a child of the 60s. I love the drug. I use the drugs to kind of enhance or diminish the effect of alcohol. That's basically it. It was kind of an adjunct to this, to the drug that I had the most contempt for, of course, which was alcohol, the one that I had this sense of having power over. And what happened to me on April 23rd, 1974, is I came to a horrible twofold realization about my life. One of them was that I had to stop drinking, but I could not drink. And the other one was that I understood at a very, very deep level that my life as I understood it was over. But I was not going to die. And I never want to feel like that again as long as I live. So the first step was easy in that part. The first part of it that was unmanageable, you know, that was easy. The The second part of my life was the unmanageability thing. I got to give you a picture of me at my first AA meeting. Now, I was 31 years old, and I had enough stuff together so it didn't look like it was drinking. You know, it looked like bad breaks and faulty relationships, but it didn't look like drinking, you know. It looked like, you know, I would have settled for some kind of deep, meaningful mental disorder. That would have been better than, you know, but you know, I had a pretty... So I came to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I was 12-step by a woman that I worked with. I mean, she did the whole thing. She blocked off her entire day, and she spent it with me, and she told me her story, and she read to me from the big book. She read everything that was read tonight, Chapter 3, Chapter 5, the 12 Traditions. I thought she was going to read the whole damn book to me that afternoon. Oh, man, you know. And she explained to me what Alcoholics Anonymous was and what it was going to be like when I went to my first meeting and what, you know, and I walked into my first meeting, and I got to tell you, I looked great. I looked fabulous at my first meeting. I walked into my first meeting, I was 6'2", I weighed 155 pounds, I had on a $250 sports jacket from Saks Fifth Avenue, I had on French gabardine slacks, Italian loafers, and a designer tie. I looked wonderful. The only thing that was going on was that I had newcomer eyes. Now, the only other place I've seen eyes like that other than on a newcomer are on a dog loose on a freeway. Pretty scary. The other thing that was going on is I had been drinking straight vodka the night before, and it was a rather warm April night here in Southern California, and I had on a lot of lemon lime cologne, and I smelled like a gimlet. And it must have been a real slow night for newcomers, because my God, you were on me. I mean, it was like being dropped into a shark tank. I'd never seen so many teeth coming at me in my life. You know, hi! Oh, man, and it was like being beaten to death with fridge magnets. You know, people, easy does it, keep coming back, one day at a time. I went, oh, man. Yeah. And you were touchers. Couldn't keep your hands off me. My God. Oh. It was scary. And yet, in a weird way, I felt safe. I really felt safe. For the first time in my life. Now, I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous when Alcoholics Anonymous was still sleazy. I kind of miss it, you know. You you didn't want anybody to know you were in this thing, you know. I went back to the first time somebody noticed that I wasn't drinking, I said, I'm on a diet. I weighed 155 pounds. What the hell I was doing on a diet, I don't know. I didn't want anybody to know I was hanging around here. None of us wanted anybody to know we were hanging around here. I mean, it was great. It was before chanting. It was before the medical industry and the insurance companies discovered we were big business, you know, so they left us alone. So we used to have things like grand mal seizures in AA meetings. It was just great, you know. Somebody would be talking and then somebody, you know, fall down into the aisle and go, you know. And your sponsor would jab you in the ribs and say, see, if you keep drinking, that'll happen to you. It's fabulous. I mean, those kind of things kept me sober. I mean, whoa, I don't want to, you know. It was just fantastic. And we had newcomers. I mean, newcomers that were just nuts. Not like me. I mean, you know, just really, you know, like me, you know, stinking and weird and just jumpy. Some of the disappointing news that I got the first day that I was being 12-step was Suzanne explained to me that I said, I know it's the drinking. I can't do this anymore. And she said, no, honey. And in Southern California, we consider sobriety to be clean and sober. And I said, exactly what does that mean? And she said that means we don't drink and we don't take drugs or any self-administered mind-altering chemicals that affect us from the neck up. I was real disappointed at that news. So I went to my first AA meeting in my little spiffy sports jacket, looking wonderful, detoxing off of all kinds of prescription drugs, alcohol, and everything else. I mean, what I didn't know was that probably half the people in that meeting had cut off wooden spoons in their pockets, and the other pocket was full of candy. So they were constantly, when you started getting really weird or twitchy, they just jam you full of candy, to kind of calm you down. She gave me orange juice and Caro syrup that afternoon. I'll never forget that. And then the other one, the little sawed-off wooden spoon, was if you had a seizure. They just shove that in your, you bite down on it and they get you the ambulance. It was fun. It was interesting. So the first step was fairly easy for me to take, and the second step talked about these coming to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Now, it doesn't say that we accepted the proof that a power greater than me could restore me to sanity, or that there even was one. But what we were allowed to do is kind of come to some kind of understanding that in a room full of drunks with the kind of experience and sobriety that you had, that you constituted a power greater than me. That somebody in the room would know how to handle me if something really got bad. That you would directly have the kind of experience I needed. So that was a power greater than me. The big book was a power greater than me. My sponsor was a power greater than me. There were a whole bunch of powers greater than me. So I didn't have to make the big leap right there in the second step. And restoring me to sanity was a little hard for me because I'm one of those nice middle-class drunks, and we don't go to funny farms with, rubber rooms and paper slippers and no doorknobs on this side. We go to psychiatrists and talk about stress, and if you were like me and managed to read a number of medical books, you could give them the kind of information that they would write you the kind of prescriptions you wanted. I love the medical profession. They're such idiots. And it's just wonderful. I learned very early in my drinking career that doctors can't say goodbye. And, it's just good. They can't say see ya. They have to write something to get you out of their office. And if you give them the right information, they'll write what you want, And so I did that a lot. So a power greater than me became Alcoholics Anonymous collectively, meetings, the meeting before and the meeting after. And they were designed to kind of move me along in the kind of direction of some kind of spiritual principles. Now, they explained to me when I first got here that Carl Jung, who was a fairly bright guy and knew a little bit about drunks, said that this was a hopeless condition unless the alcoholic himself had some kind of spiritual experience. And now, I was raised an Irish Catholic as opposed to a Roman Catholic, and I'd been the altar boy, and I'd done all that, and there I was, puking my guts out here and there, so this kind of religion thing was not a big thing for me. My spiritual life, when I got to you, consisted of those two alcoholic prayers. The first one is, "Dear God, get me out of this, and I will never do it again." And the second alcoholic prayer is, "Whew." And that was my spiritual life, and certainly got me through, didn't it? And so when they started creeping up on this third step thing, I started going, oh man, woohoo, this is getting a little creepy here. They're going to bring out the hats and the secret handshake soon. And but I looked around. I looked around at the guys who had the eyes. The ones that had the soft eyes, who actually had jobs and cars and houses and wives and kids and, like functional lives. And they all believed that they were alcoholic and that the program worked and there was a God. So I hung on to their belief for a while until I kind of formed one of my own. And I wish I could present you some kind of, really compact, nice little look at this. But the longer I've been sober, the less I understand this God thing. And the longer I'm sober, I understand that it's not my job to understand God. It's my job to accept God. And that's been a biggie for me. And I think that, the big book says on page 55, a wonderful thing. It says, deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. I think we carry that around with us, and I think, it doesn't matter if God is Allah or Buddha or Muhammad or Christ or whatever, whatever you call it. I don't think it matters. Just once we kind of come to that idea that we're carrying around within us some little thing that connects us to each other and collectively connects us to something much larger than us. The nuns used to call it the soul. I like to call it a little microchip of God. You can call it the essence of nature. I mean, whatever. There's all kinds of names for it. But once we kind of grasp that, it makes it easier for us to accept this stuff. And the third step is the launching pad. You know, the third step is once I've made a decision to turn my will and my life over to God as I understand Him, I don't get spiritual. I am not suddenly spiritual. I've just made a decision. I've made a decision to take a path that will lead me into some kind of spiritual life that's acceptable to a bum like me. You know, the third step is like this. If I decide to buy a house today, I don't get a new house today. If I decide to buy a house today, I buy a newspaper. And then I look through the newspaper and I look at ads for real estate brokers, and then I contact a real estate broker and we go look at some houses. And eventually, after we see a bunch of houses, we make an offer on a house, and they make a counter offer, and we make another offer, and then we decide on what the price is, and we decide to buy the house, and then we open escrow, and then go to the bank, and months down the road, I get the key to the house. So the decision to own a house requires a whole bunch of steps before I get the key, and that's exactly what Alcoholics Anonymous is. The third step is making the decision, and the key's down the road. And the third step is that I make a decision to embark on this. This isn't just a journey, this Alcoholics Anonymous. Let me tell you. This ain't no journey. This is an adventure, man. This is the wildest adventure you will ever imagine. And like every great adventure, it's got really good parts to it and really lousy parts to it. And that's what makes it all worth being here. That's what makes it's the kind of life you and I have always been looking for in bottles and drugs and all that kind of thing. I mean, the absolute tingling excitement of being 100% alive every goddamn day. And let me tell you, if you're new, shit happens. But so do miracles. So do miracles. And in the long run, there's a lot more miracles than the other stuff. There really is. So the third step is I decided to take this adventure. So if I'm off on a great journey, I got to find out who I am. I got to find out where I'm starting from. Where am I starting this adventure? And that's what the fourth step is. We got to find out exactly who's going to take this thing. And so they asked me to do that. I was 3 weeks sober. My sponsor said, you got 3 weeks to do it. I didn't know you couldn't do it at 6 weeks, so I did it. I took the fourth step exactly like the big book talked about. I did it under fears, resentments, and sexual problems or relationships, however you want to do it. Relationships. I love relationships. As if I knew anything about relationships. I got to tell you, one of the miracles of being sober is May 16th, I'll be married 30 years. Oh, no, don't. She's the one who deserves the applause. I know. I'm the challenge. She's the solution. I once had a guy I sponsored who said, what the hell do you know about marriage? You've only done it once. You got me there, man. I'm up. You know. So anyway, we defined who I was. Who's going to take this adventure? So I did it. I went and talked to my sponsor. Now, a sponsor is not a god or a guru. You know, sponsorship can get pretty weird in this place. You know, what a sponsor is a guide. It's simply somebody who knows the way out. I mean, early sobriety is like coming to out of a blackout and finding yourself standing stark naked on the steps of the city hall of the capital city of a third world country. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was in that kind of situation, I'd be real interested in finding a guide real fast. Wouldn't have to be the best looking, the richest, the nicest, nothing. Just somebody who knew how the hell to get out of that situation. And that's basically what a sponsor is somebody who can get you the hell out of early sobriety. How many here are in your first year of sobriety? Put your hand up. Let me see. Oh, wow. All right. How do you like it so far? Right? I just hope your first year of sobriety was as miserable as mine was. Because I got to tell you something. One of the reasons I've been sober for almost 27 years is I never want to have to get sober again as long as I live. It was the worst experience of my adult life. You know, it just was hideous. I shook and was twitching and I was nuts. Even worse than I am now. Anyway. So anyway, I took this fifth step with my guide. You know, I said, okay, this is who I am, man. This is what I am. This is where I come from. The wonderful thing about that is the phone calls that we were doing every day went from a half an hour to 10 minutes after that, because he had all the information. There's a kind of whole theory in AA, in the big book they talked about it, because there weren't a lot of people around with any sobriety. And there's still people who like to kind of go do their fifth step with a priest or a nun or some holy person somewhere that they'll never see again, I kind of like that idea. I wanted to kind of take a blind nun up the Amazon, do my fifth step, and shoot her. And then, and then nobody would know who I was still, But the whole idea of this thing is doing it with a sponsor, so you suddenly got somebody in your life who knows exactly who you are. And because of that, like I said, the phone calls went for a half an hour to 10 minutes, because I didn't have to keep explaining the problem. And then he would start doing things like coming up at a meeting and say, listen, you got to go over and talk to that guy because there's a problem like you had. And I go, wait a minute, did you tell him? And he'd say, no, just go talk to them, So anyway. So then we went on, then he looked at the stuff and he said, okay, this is what we got to discard and this is what we got to keep in order for this adventure. And that's the sixth and seventh step. What is the baggage I got to let go of? What is the stuff I got to leave behind? And what is the stuff I got to acquire? What is the stuff the life skills I got to build? What are the changes I got to make? And then he said, basically, before we leave the campground, you got to clean it up. And so that's the eighth and ninth step. And so what I did was I made a list of all the people that I had to make amends to, all the people that I had done damage to and hurt. And I went around and made them. I made them face to face when I could, and I wrote letters when I couldn't. And suddenly I was ready. Suddenly I was ready. Halfway through that thing, they talk about it. The promises started coming true. I was able to look you in the face. I was able to be equal with everybody else in the world. I started feeling okay about myself. I cleaned up a lot of the wreckage of my past. I'm now spending a great deal of time cleaning up the wreckage of my present. I seem to accumulate wreckage in my life. I don't know what that is about. But anyway, so I did, the ninth step, and then we started on this real journey, And it took me about a year to do this stuff. By the time I was in I was a year sober, I had done all that kind of legwork, and I was ready for the adventure of my life. And the 10th step is kind of keeping me kind of on track on a daily, just kind of keeping me on the trail. And what I do is I look at my life and I say, okay, what did I do today that I approve of, and what did I do today that I don't approve of? And the stuff that I don't approve of, I try to fix as best I can, and the stuff I do approve of, I say, that's nice, and let it go. Chuck C. used to talk about the fact that we live our lives in 24-hour compartments, and I absolutely love that. I let go of the victories and the defeats at the end of each day, and just get on with it. And then the 11th step comes along, and that's a deepening kind of relationship with this power, this thing in my life, this force, this whatever it is, and I had to learn to pray. I had to learn to pray in a way that, I told you I was an Irish Catholic. I can do the 4-minute rosary, like that, But I mean, really, kind of fundamentally, kind of be able to kind of sit back in a way and talk to this thing that I don't understand. I read some of the works of Einstein, who was a fairly bright guy, and in his writings he talked about having met with all the great minds of his time, all the great scientists and philosophers and writers, that they all seemed to agree that when they had reached the limit in their field of human intelligence, when they had reached the absolute limit that the mind could go in anything, just beyond that seemed to be a benign intelligence. And I love that concept of a God, a benign intelligence, just something that makes it all work, man. Just something that cares for all of us equally, And so what I do on a daily basis, I do a kind of meditation that's made. I've tried hey, I got sober in Hollywood. I've tried every meditation there is in the world. And I've kind of come down to one that's really easy for me on a daily basis. What I do is I find a quiet place. I got a chair in my bedroom, which was my drinking chair. It's this wingback chair. It's been recovered. I haven't, but anyway, and I sit in it and I concentrate on the phrase "Be still and know that I am God." And what I do is I break that phrase down one word at a time and be. I just sit there and let everything happen. I let my stomach gurgle and listen to the traffic outside and just twitch, and I get an itch in my ankle and I just be. I just be. And then I be still. I just stop. I just absolutely stop everything that I'm doing, everything that I'm thinking. I just be still. I just be still and know. And in knowing, I just open up my head. I just open up my head to all the possibilities there are in the universe. Be still and know. And be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am. And what that is that there's something in the center of me that states that it's alive and well. Be still and know that I am. And then it identifies itself. Be still and know that I am God. And that's what it is. I'm carrying around this little chip, this little flame, this little pilot light inside me. And you know what? I can recognize it in you because I believe that we're created in the image and likeness, not by what we look like, but what we do. I believe that the thing that makes us closest to God is when we're acting lovingly. And I can see it in AA meetings. I can see it when some little old lady says to some little 15-year-old punk chick with, tattooed from head to foot, come sit next to me, dear. I can see the family resemblance. I can see how she looks like God. I can see it when the guy gets on the bus and goes to central office across town and gets a box full of books and gets back on the bus and brings them back for the meeting. I can see it when somebody gets there at 6:30 and puts on the coffee. I can see the family resemblance. I can see how he looks like God. I can see the ones who are standing at the doors who shake hands and say, "Hi, I'm Fred," and help pull people in. I can see by people who are cleaning up and folding up chairs. I can see the family resemblance. I can see how they look like God. I can see it when we're being loving. And so I try to do that. And you know what? I can only recognize the resemblance when I'm being loving too. When I'm not being loving, I can't see any of it. Just can't see any of it. All I can see is how foolish and venal and small and mean-minded you are. But when I'm okay, you suddenly get okay. Isn't that interesting? And so I work on that 11th step to the best of my ability. And as I said, what I've come to find out is that my job is to accept the will of God, not to understand it. And it sure comes in funny packages, let me tell you. Sure comes in weird packages. And I've had a lot of trouble with it in the last 5 years. It's been an on and off thing with me and God. I haven't been too crazy about him because he hadn't appeared to be too crazy about me. And so we've been working through some stuff together. And then comes the 12th step. And the 12th step is in 3 parts, and the first part talks about having had a spiritual awakening. Now, I was waiting for a spiritual experience. I wanted the thunder and the burning, but I wanted the wind to blow up my ass like it did with Bill Wilson. Nothing. Not a damn thing. No voices, no message on my answering machine, nothing. Just kind of waiting. And while I've been waiting for the experience, the awakenings happened. Because what's happened is by working these 12 steps and hanging out with you, I've noticed stuff. I've noticed stuff like double rainbows. I've noticed stuff like red suns going down behind oceans. I've noticed things like babies laughing and flowers opening and all that stuff that I was too cool to ever deal with, man. Because that stuff was just too corny for somebody who was hip, slick, and drunk like I was. And so this awakening stuff has been an awakening of my spirit and my soul and my kindness. And then we carry this message. And I carry it wherever I'm asked to do it. I carry it. This stuff, talking from podiums, is the least important 12-step work there is in AA. I can look fabulous in Orange County because you ain't going to see me on Monday morning in Vancouver. I'm flying away, You're not going to see me in my den or my bedroom or on the freeway. Oh, man, the freeway. That is a true test of sobriety, isn't it? I got one for you. If you're going to go from point A to point B on the freeway, stay in one lane. Then you'll be truly spiritual. It hasn't happened in the first 27 years, so, work it out. Anyway, and then we practice these principles in all our affairs. And there's the biggie. I mean, I can look great at an AA meeting. But what am I like with my kid? What am I like with my wife? What am I like in my workplace? What am I like with my boss? And that's where we carry these things. Lately some interesting. Well, let me just give you up to speed, because basically what this thing is about for me, in order to make this mean anything, I mean, I can get up here and do a bunch of party pieces and sit down, and you'll never know who the hell I am. But I want you to know who I am, because I want you to understand that there's a miracle that has taken place in this human being because of these kind of rooms and because of these kind of events over the years in my life. And the miracle is that I become a human being. The miracle is that I'm well past a middle-aged man, which is unexpected. I have lived far beyond my life expectancy, let me tell you, when you do the things that I did. I mean, if I lived to be, 80 years old, middle age was 20 years ago for me. So, I'm an old guy. I'm not an old guy, I'm an old man. And I like that. I mean, it's like I'm a grown-up. I'm starting to feel like I've been young for so long. Jesus. I mean, youthfulness is a curse, let me tell you. I mean, man, I kind of like being a little mature. I like being older than my 19-year-old daughter. It's nice. So I've had some wild times. 15 years ago, or 13 years ago, we moved up to Canada for a really important. Let me kind of give you a little quick thing. My first year of sobriety was just insane. I mean, it was just absolutely insane, because I detoxed in these rooms. I came off of all the drugs and all the alcohol sitting in these rooms. I mean, I was just real quick. But I was always kind of well dressed. So I was about 4 days sober one time, and they asked me to read chapter 5, and I got up and read it. And the person who was leading the meeting said it was the first time they ever heard it read in one breath. I was quick, just. And I got a sponsor, and and I got to be a year sober, and 6 months sober, I was just nuts. Any doctors who have any ethics and know anything about alcoholism, which is a kind of a rare combination, understand that you can't double diagnose an alcoholic in his first year of sobriety, because in his first year of sobriety, you manifest every mental disorder known to man. I mean, I was clearly manic, depressive, bipolar. I mean, I was either just in love with Alcoholics Anonymous or contemplating suicide. I mean, I was just going whoop, 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 whoop. And the old farts explained things to me like the reason we stuff you full of candy is when you stop drinking large quantities of fermented sugar, you tend to get kind of hypoglycemic and kind of have up and down things. Oh, really? How interesting. I was paranoid. I knew there were large groups of people talking about me. They were all in AA meetings, Social psychopath. I mean, I was just, I'm dealing with a guy that I'm sponsoring now who came in. While he was drinking, he decided he had to see the Pope, so he got on a plane and went to Rome. And while he was in Rome, he had a few more beers and decided that he needed to dedicate his life to Jesus. So he took off all his clothes and was standing naked in a children's park, and they put him in a funny farm in Rome and diagnosed him as all kinds of goddamn things. So he's back, And so so he's been sober for 2 years, and I'm working with him. He got obsessed with some female movie star, and he had to buy her a coat, and he was going to marry her, and went and talked to a psychiatrist who said, don't do that, so he didn't, luckily. But every time he goes to talk to her about these ideas, she puts it down as displaying symptoms. Now, if he came to an AA meeting and said the same thing, he'd get a laugh. We go, oh, yeah, been there, done that, Oh, naked in the park. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. So, I mean, they just got to leave us alone in our first year of sobriety. Just leave us to you guys, because you understand us, I mean, I didn't get sober with the professionals. I got sober with the experts in Alcoholics Anonymous, So, anyway, 6 months, just nuts. And I tried as best I could to sleep through my first year of sobriety because, I mean, an entire day of reality was more than I could handle. I don't know about you. Whoa, So I was a functioning alcoholic. I had a wife who worked, and So I went home. I was 6 months sober, and I was trying to take a nap, and I couldn't. And I had my first spiritual experience. I was just furious that I couldn't sleep. So I looked up at the ceiling and I went, "I don't believe in you, and I think you're a jerk." And then it occurred to me, if I didn't believe, who was I yelling at? And then, being a good ex-Catholic, I waited for 3 weeks to see if I get punished for calling him a jerk. Yeah. Woo! And it didn't, It just broke an old idea of a God that was out there and up there, and what started to form was the thing that I carry around with me now. When I was 9 months sober, I got my first 12-step call, and I dropped by my sponsors and told him I was going, and he explained to me that there was a difference between carrying the message and spreading the disease. And it went on. I got my first year cake, and it was the first real victory of my life. And then I was 15 months sober, and they threw me away. They didn't treat me like a newcomer anymore. They thought I should give back. I was really mad. And, you went running after other people who were throwing up on your shoes. And I had to do things like greet at doors and clean up at AA meetings and do all the stuff you got to do, When I was 3 years sober, I decided I needed a new sponsor because my old sponsor was no longer enchanted with my character defects. I was calling him with the same shit, and he was saying, "Are you still doing that? We have talked about this. When are you going to apply the principles?" So it's about that time that you see a lot of people starting splitting off to go into other 12-step programs, for issues, so they can start over again until they get to that 3-year point where they got to deal with the fact that there's deep entrenched stuff that we got to deal with sooner or later. A lot of character defects just kind of vanish because we're not drinking, and then some of them, are kind of lifted out like a sliver, because of the steps. And then those ones that God cuts out of you with a dull stone knife and no anesthetic. And those are my survival mechanisms. Those are the things that kept me alive out there that are no longer useful, but I won't let go of, And then I was 5 years sober, and what a great victory 5 years sober is. In between 5 and 6 years sober, I trashed my life. Basically, what I did was I was sober enough to look at the fence lines of my sobriety, to start looking at some real old ideas, and I went out and explored them, and I blew my life apart. I blew my marriage apart, and I came very, very close to drinking. And luckily I didn't, because I had enough of a sense of a God in my life that I understood for the first time in my life that there are times in Alcoholics Anonymous when there is no reason not to drink. And that if you're at that point and you don't have a God, you're dead. And so what I had to do was I had to go back and rebuild my life. I had to go back and rebuild my program and go back and rebuild the steps. When I was 8 years sober, my daughter was born. We had rebuilt our marriage, and my life kind of came back to me. It was just absolutely wonderful. And my daughter is now 19, and we went on 10 years sober. 10 years sober was just an impossibility for somebody like me, but there I was, and I was speaking at conferences and sharing, and my life was just absolutely fantastic. And when I was 15 years sober, an opportunity to move to Canada came up, and we went, and it was a fantastic creative event. I got to do something beyond anything that I ever dreamed of doing. I had the greatest kind of creative and personal kind of recognition and victory in my life, and at the same time I was diagnosed with skin cancer. The yin and the yang of life, What I like is I like life to be all great or all lousy. I just hate that mixture, when it's kind of a little of this and a little of that, that's the hard stuff to deal with, life on life's terms. I want it to be extraordinarily glorious or extraordinarily hard, something extraordinary. I can handle famine, death, war, and pestilence. I can't handle flat tires and hangnails. So anyway, about 5 years ago, I started my own business, and it was a spectacular failure. It was one of those kind of slow, horrible failures. It was kind of like a great ocean liner springing a leak and just slowly sinking into the ocean, taking every ounce of my cash with it. And I was writing checks to fix it and not telling my wife what I was doing, because I was going to solve the problem first and then say, "Honey, we had this terrible crisis, but I got us out of it, babe." When I asked to put the third mortgage on the house, she said, "What in God's name is going on?" And I told her. Now, she has been a member of Al-Anon since I got sober. Now, an Al-Anon is not somebody who's merely married to an alcoholic. And an Al-Anon is somebody who attends Al-Anon meetings and works the 12 steps of Al-Anon, the 12 traditions, who sponsors people in Al-Anon, who is active in Al-Anon service and works that program. And my life has been graced for 27 years with a woman who does that. But Al-Anon has helped her get her in touch with her feelings, and when she found out what was going on, she poured a strip off of me and poured gasoline in it. I mean, man. And so we sold the big house and bought the little condo and regrouped, and it was terrifying. And I started looking for a job. Now, I was in my mid-50s when this happened, and they're not hiring guys like me. They're retiring guys like me. So I was going out for job interviews and, sitting across the desk with guys whose skin hadn't cleared up yet. And it was really swell, And they're sitting there at the interview saying, "How am I going to say no to my grandfather?" It's just really wonderful, wonderful experience. And so I kept looking for work, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then a job as manager of the central office in Vancouver came up, and I applied for it, and out of 25 people, I got it. And I became a special worker, which is a bit like being a Korean comfort woman. And I have never entered into such a nightmare in my life. The place was like a Russian court. My operating committee was headed by an ex-con with 3 years of sobriety. One guy on the operating committee had to resign because he was arrested for murder. It was a nightmare, and they didn't want any of that Southern California bullshit AA in there. And I mean, it was, and they tried 3 times to fire me, and on the 3rd time they did it. After trashing me professionally and personally, it was the worst experience I've ever had in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't wish it on anybody. I've never experienced that kind of viciousness in this fellowship before. I've never heard such horrible rumors and things. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And I was just sickened and stunned by it. And what I did was I talked to a lot of people, including some professional people, and I took it to professional arbitration, and we worked it out because I was not going to walk away from it. If I'd walked away from it, I would have been approving of it, and I certainly couldn't approve of it. They had to know that what they did was not acceptable to me or to anyone. And so we did that. And it came down to a year ago, and a year ago I was asked to be at this conference, and there was a lot of stuff going on in my life, a lot of stuff. Bonnie and I had a lot of trouble between us, she was very, very angry still about what had gone on, and we had gone to see a marriage counselor, and we're talking about it. I mean, here I was, Mr. AA and Mrs. Al-Anon, and we couldn't work it out. We were going to see some woman who would listen to it, and it didn't look like it was going to get repaired. It just, And I got this new job. I walked into this job interview, and it happened to be in a field where 70% of the people are over 50, and they needed somebody who could teach them technology. And I knew a little about it. They gave me the job, so I'd go and do presentations to people who are terrified of computers, and I do it all over the country. And I mean, it's an absolutely perfect. I mean, it's just absolutely wonderful. It combines, my business background and my acting. I mean, it's just incredible. So anyway, I got this job, and I should have been absolutely thrilled with it, and I wasn't. I wasn't thrilled with it. I thought, oh well, I wonder what's going to blow this apart, And I wasn't sleeping, and I was putting on weight, and then I was sleeping too much, and I was going through. And I finally went to the doctor, and I went and talked to the doctor, and he said, "Tell me about your life." And at the moment, my mother was dying. She had been dying for about 2 years. She had just kind of folded her tent. This incredibly vibrant, exciting, funny woman was just checking out. She was just going in inches, and it drove me crazy. I was having the worst time. I would go up and see her and spend time with her, and she was just, it was just, and what it was when you're very old and you're chronically ill and you've been ill for a long, long time, your whole life caves in on you, and everything is about you. It's only about you. It's not about anybody else. And I suddenly realized why it was making me angry and why it was upsetting me, because it was exactly like alcoholism. It was exactly that kind of terminal self-obsession. That just, how am I going to get... All she wanted to do was feel better. She just wanted to feel better, and it wasn't going to happen. And man, I know how that felt. And when I realized what that was, then it was okay for me to be with her. And mothers, oh man, I'd done my amends and everything, and Irish mothers, they got mouths on them that just do not quit. She was, 2 days before she died, she was correcting my grammar, for Christ's sake. I went to see her one Sunday. She said, nobody has been to see me all week. I said, Mom, I was here on Wednesday. She said, oh, you. I'd get that shot. I'd go back and see her with some flowers. Here you are, doing my best. And the reason why is because you taught me that she took care of me my first 18 years of my life, and I took care of her the last 18 of hers. And that's just the deal. Because what AA has taught me is us sober guys get up to the plate. We show up. We suit up, we show up. We get to the plate. Sometimes we hit some home runs. Sometimes we strike out. Most of the time we hit singles and doubles. And that's about it. And so I did that. I was a good son to her, So on the weekend that I was supposed to be here, I called and said I can't be there. She's very close to death. And as a matter of fact, she died on the Sunday that exactly a year ago. And we were all there. My brother and sister-in-law, all her grandchildren, we were all there as she took her last breath. And it was just absolutely amazing to be there for that moment, and she was fighting so kind of hard to breathe, and we all said, it's okay, Mom, we're all here, we're all okay, everything's all right, you don't need to take care of us, just let go, And she took her last breath, and I reached down and kissed her on the forehead and closed her eyes and just kind of put my cheek against hers, and she got the last word. She went, and scared the shit out of all of us. We all went, She got it. Yeah. Man. Funny. So I went to see this doctor, and he said, tell me about your last year. And I told him, and he went, oh, my God. He said, you have all the symptoms of classic depression. I said, oh, terrific, Doc. So what are we going to do here? And he said, well, there's medication. And I said, listen, I don't want to spend my life living inside of a helium balloon. What else you got? And he said, let's take a blood test. So he took a blood test. Blood test came back. My body had stopped producing serotonin. Serotonin is the thing that allows you to feel pleasure. I've been trying so hard to work these steps, to be okay, to suit up and show up, that I had burned it all out of me, man, And so he said, we're going to put you on massive doses of B12, and we'll get you on St. John's wort, and let's see how that does. We'll try that first. And we started doing it. And within 2 weeks, I started coming back up. I could feel it. It was absolutely amazing. It worked for me. It was absolutely wonderful that it had happened. And the thing with central office got settled in my favor, and that happened, and the job thing, and my wife is working, and she's got a great job, and my darling daughter is my daughter is now 19. She's 5'7" with a mane of red hair. She's absolutely stunning, and she's now in Europe, and. We go from, 3 years ago, I had no money. 3 years ago, we had none. They're coming for stuff, that kind of no money. I'm almost 25 years sober, and I'm going, I can't pay my bills, And last week, my daughter called, and she was complaining that the train from Paris to London was an hour late. And I said, did you hear what you just said? And she said, oh my God. And we got hysterical. I mean, we just got hysterical laughing. I mean, within a year, you know, that's the big problem of the day. The train from Paris was an hour late. Yeah. So stick around. If you're having the worst day of your adult life here, don't drink. Just don't drink. I mean, some days in Alcoholics Anonymous, I am a stunning example of sobriety. I just shimmer with it. You can introduce me to your mother. Mom, here's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know? Some days I am the poster boy for sobriety. And other days, I don't drink. And then those days that I kind of like to check into one of those hospitals, you know, and get a lot of Thorazine and some paper slippers and make a wallet. Yeah. But unfortunately, I'm not crazy. You know, I really would like to be, but I'm not. You know, I probably manifest symptoms. If I went and told this story right now to some professional, they'd probably not let me out of the office. But but I'm not crazy. I'm selfish, self-obsessed, self-destructive, self-promoting, self. That's what I am. That's my problem. That's alcoholism. And so what I got to do is I got to force myself to care about you more than I care about me. And some days I do it really well, and sometimes it's really hard. It's really hard, you know? But I go through the motions until I feel it. I've done that since I got here. You know, I worked the 12 steps before they made any sense to me. I shook hands at doorways before they made any sense to me. I made coffee before it made any sense to me. I'd done everything before it made any sense to me. And years later, it makes sense to me. The wonderful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is it's shortened the time period between the event and the emotion. Before I got here, something would happen to me, and 3 weeks later, I'd feel it, you know? Now it's getting closer, and I love it. And I've been trying to live in the now for a long, long time. I've been trying to be okay and be here and be with you. And, you know, I've been sponsoring guys and talking to them about you know, staying in the now and being here. And I go to AA meetings. I go to AA meetings because I hear stuff. I love first year cakes. I don't know, something happens at first. People say things at first year cakes that they don't even know they're saying. You know? I think God speaks through first year cakes and then never speaks again. I think that's when it happens, you know. I mean, I'm sitting in Hollywood and this little punk chick got up one day. I mean, she was a mess. What a mess. You know, hair shaved, you know, just the worst. The worst. And she got up here and she said, she said two things that changed my life. She said, I was always angry that my parents never approved of me until I learned that I never approved of them. You know. And then she said, my sponsor told me to be where my hands are. Luckily, I was about 20 years sober, so I could get it, you know. Because it was way too simple to get before then, you know. Just be where your hands are. One thing that happened to me when I was 8 years sober, my daughter was born, my father died, and we had to put down a dog that my wife absolutely loved. She had had this dog before me, and she loved the dog, I think, more than me. But anyway, the dog had to go, and she couldn't do it, so she said, take it, will you? And I said, okay. So I took it to the vet, and that day, I mean, he was deaf and he was blind and he was frightened now, and that's why we had to put him down. And I took him to the vet, and he was like a puppy that morning. And he licked my face and all. I mean, you know. And I gave it to the vet, and I went out to the car, and I put my hand on the door, and I wanted a drink. I mean, I wanted a drink. And you know about wanting a drink, and I was 8 years sober. And there wasn't any reason not to have it. I'd been a real Boy Scout. I'd gotten through my father's death and my daughter's birth, and I had been there and putting down this dog, and I had done everything, man. I had showed up, I had done it all, and I was screaming with some kind of pain that I did not understand, that I had never felt, and I knew that the only thing that would take care of it was a quart of Southern Comfort, man. Been there. And I got to tell you something. If you're 8 years sober and you feel like that and you don't believe in God, you'll be drunk within a half an hour. And what I did was I got in my car and I pulled it out onto the Hollywood freeway, and I did something that I had done when I was newly sober, when I was brand new, when I couldn't do anything about the pain and the insanity of being sober. I drove up and down that freeway as fast as I could, screaming at the top of my lungs, just yelling. Not even words, just that kind of high-pitched animal kind of sound that I occasionally used to hear in my car when I was drinking and wondering where it was coming from. You know? Just tearing it out of my gut and my throat and demanding that God stick with me in that car at that time because I was going to drink. And I got through it. And I got through it. And there have been several times in my sobriety when that kind of stuff has happened. So if you're new, work on trying to figure out what this thing is. This spiritual thing, this God thing, this higher power thing. Find it, however weirdly it's constructed, however it resonates for you. Find it, build it, nurture it, and hang on to it. Because you're going to need it. I guarantee you're going to need it. And you'll never know when. It'll come out of the strangest places in the strangest times. And you'll need it. And I pray to God that you got it. And one of the easiest way to keep it is to stay here. Stay right now. Don't go backwards. Don't go into the past, and don't go into the future. The future never works out the way we plan it. The past is always a dangerous place for us. Stay here. Stay now. Because this is it. And I am it, and you are it, and so is that. And he is it, and she is it, and it is it, and that is that. Oh, it is this, and it is thus, and it is them, and it is us. But it is now, and here it is, and here we are, so this is it. L'chaim. God bless you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.